All right, week 6. Hard to believe. We've only got week 6, 7, and 8 left. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. And let me just go here and get my sharing set up. We're going to have a pretty fun session tonight if you like AIs and enemies and logic and that kind of stuff. So let me get my share going. Okay, share. We'll do the entire screen. I'll make myself a little smaller. Probably see some Zoom weirdness, but here we go. Okay, so let us recap what we worked on last week. We have some AI in our game that is going from patrol points to different points. So that is really cool. That was a lot of fun to put together. Um, Now we're going to do something even more interesting with our AI characters. So it's one thing just to have them kind of blindly patrol around the map. And even when they see us, they don't really do anything. They just kind of mindlessly go to their patrol points. We want to give them a little more advanced behavior. And what we're going to do tonight, this afternoon, are two things. One is we're going to have it go to a random place on the field and wait, and then go to another random place on the field and keep repeating that. And then the second thing that we're going to do, hopefully we'll be able to get to this, is we're going to be able to give our AI characters some eyes so that they can actually see and detect when they see our player character, which is so we've got this set in a soccer environment, but think more of like a classic horror game, like a Resident Evil or one of those games where you're trying to kind of stealthily move about the game and not get caught by the enemy. So think about that as we're going through this. So what I would like to do, or like for us to do, let me see if I can hide that Zoom thing again. Okay, is let's go into our blueprints folder and we're going to create a copy of our defender. So we're going to right click and we'll just do duplicate. You could also do Control D. And I'm going to call this copy AI Wanderer. Okay, I'll open that up. And obviously, since we made a copy, we should have all the logic that we have here for our patrol points that we did last week. So we're going to do a couple things right off the bat. We are going to disconnect from begin play this function right here. And just to recap, this function right here is all of this stuff because we created a custom event called move to next point where we go through the patrol, all that stuff. And after we um, get to the end of our loop here, we just call this event again. But we're going to disconnect it just right there. And we are also going to make some visual changes to this one. So make sure that you select the head and change the texture to anything really, just so it's not, we want to be able to differentiate this from our other AIs that are in the game. So I'm just going to change to maybe an orange and I'll just do orange. All right, compile, save, and let's go back to the event graph. Now this is Unreal Engine has some really cool tools for having your AI kind of, move about the environment. We had just the basic stuff where we moved to concrete points, right? Our patrol points. And we didn't quite get to this last week, but I did mention how I wanted to have the AI find a random place in the map and go to that. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to delete that. We're going to right click and create a new custom event. Type custom event. There it is. And I'm going to call this wander. All right. And we're going to use some of the same kind of logic here. So we can actually use this node the AI moved to. I'll just copy. You could also Control C. And we'll just go up to here and we'll do a Control V. Paste it in and connect. Okay. So we will then connect our wander to our event begin play. So we'll drag the pin out. We'll just type wander. If you called your custom event something other than wander, just make sure you pull that out there. All right, we'll compile and save again. And now and I like to do this a lot because sometimes I forget. I'm like, okay, what is it we got to hook up? Oh, we got to have a paw reference to self. So we got to tell it what AI to move. So I'm going to drag here and I'm just going to say self, get a reference to self. Okay. And then we have to figure out where do we want our AI to go. And what we did last week was we created this patrol system. So we got all the patrol points, and that is where the target was. But here we're actually going to use a different pin. Instead of a target, we're going to grab a random point in the radius. So, or the navigation mesh, I should say. And if you recall, as you remember, the navigation mesh is nav mesh bounds, and then we press P on the keyboard. Sometimes it's finicky. And sometimes we have to jiggle it a little bit, which I'll do. I'll just get the move tool. Oh, shoot, where is it? I just do it this way. Just kind of jiggle it a little bit. It'll rebuild the navigation, and then we should be able to press P and see it light up. But I'm not seeing it light up. Well, anyway, we're working with the nav mesh. So we're saying, okay, find a random point in this mesh that we have, this map, like the GPS we told it to use. There it goes. Finally lit up. So we told the AI you can move anywhere in this green area. And obviously, if we reduce it a little bit, we could kind of scale it that way. But that's the area that we're going to be saying, hey, go find a random point on that nav mesh volume. Okay, so let's right click and we need a node called get random reachable point in radius. I know that's a mouthful, so I'll do it again. We'll right click, get random reachable point in radius. Okay. And so now we got to know, okay, from whose perspective. So we need to get the location of our wanderer, right? So we're going to grab out of here the origin. This is the starting point, and we're going to do a get actor location. And it's going to be this one right here. Okay. So far, so good. So then now we're going to hook this up to here. Clean this up a little bit. And let's compile and save. And then we also need a radius. So right here, we'll just do, I don't know, 500. All right, now we're going to bring this into the level. I can turn this off, the nav mesh stuff. And where's my player start? I think it's over here somewhere. So I'm just going to drag this new one in right here. And then I'm going to play from here and let's see what this guy does. Okay, well, it looked like it kind of worked. Let's try it again. Hit press play. So a couple things I can see is that the radius is not very big. So if we go over here to where he is, or she, where our AI is, and we can, if you remember, we can use the simulation option so we can kind of observe what's going on without being in the game. Okay, so let's go and change this to like 5,000. Compile, save, and just as a reminder, we're in the get random reachable point of radius, and we are changing the radius to 5,000. And now let's back up and simulate again. Okay, so yeah, much bigger distance. All right, that's cool. So we've got patrolling AIs and we got guys that randomly roam. But let's make this a little more functional. So what happens is when we start play, we call our custom function, right, which is wander. And it's this thing right here. But once it gets to this destination, it just kind of stops. So like we did at the end of our patrol point stuff, we want it to then go and run this whole function again. So let's go out of here. On success, let's do a delay. And we'll make it 2 seconds. And then after that, let's call it again. So we'll drag out of, once the delay is completed, then we're going to call wander. We'll compile and save, and now go ahead and good point to save all. Now let's see if our little yellow guy behaves a little differently once he's found his spot on the map. Okay, very cool. So now he gets to a point, and then they'll stop and they'll wait and then do it again. Okay. All right, now let's give this even more functionality by promoting this to a variable and making it public. And what that does is that lets us select this specific AI in the level, and we can change the radius over here for every instance of it. So I'll show you what that means. So for the radius, right click, promote to variable. You can just leave it as radius, that's fine. Very important, make sure to click this eyeball. And another thing that you can do is, and this is always good practice, is a little tooltip. So we can say, how far can the AI roam? And do make sure it's also instance editable. Compile, save. Then we go back to our wanderer here. And here we see radius is 5,000. And if we roll over it, we roll over, how far can the AI roam? Good. So what we'll do is we'll leave that one like that. Let's make a copy. Hold down Alt. Just drag that out. And let's change this one to like 10,000. Okay. Now let's take a look. Keep an eye on both of them. I'll try to keep both of them in the field of view here. So we simulate. Okay. That one's already stopped. Okay, so now if you're again thinking about a stealth kind of game or a game where you have to avoid detection, now it gets a little trickier because they're not both stopping at the same time. You've got one guy that's got a little bit longer of a patrol, and then the other guy has a little shorter patrol. All right, cool stuff. So let's do one more thing. To make it even harder, again, using our stealth game example, let's change this from instead of being 2 seconds, let's drag out of here. And we are going to do a random float. Remember, a float is a number that can have decimals in range. Okay. So the delay will say maybe there's no delay, or they could be up to 5 seconds. Because like if you're familiar with games where you have enemies that patrol, they'll usually get to a point and then they'll stop and then they'll resume whatever they were doing. But if we make this delay before we recall or launch this function again, we'll see that we can't really predict their movements because we don't know how long they're going to stop before they resume. So let us simulate again. Okay, this guy stopped for look like we just can watch him, that's fine. Okay, that was like a second. Okay, and that was almost the full 5 seconds. So you can see how you can use a little bit of kind of programming, coding, wizardry to make these characters seem a little more lifelike, and the way that you do that is to make them not be predictable. Okay. So let's think that is all for here. Let's create our code block. And we'll just kind of move everything around. Always good to be tidied up. And here and here, and then back to here. Okay, so what we do is we select everything, we hit the C, and we're going to call this random roaming. We'll pick a fun color for it. Maybe I'll think about a blue. Yeah. Okay, nice. So we'll compile and save. And now we have a second kind of AI. Okay. So what we want to do next is we're going to talk about having the AI sense the player to use its eyes and ears. We're actually not going to use the ears for this course, but you can also do audio so that the AI can hear, like if the player makes footsteps. Okay, so for this one, we're going to actually create a new level. And the way to do that is to go to your file menu, select new level, and we want the basic. not the open world because that's still too much for what we need. So let's do that. And we get, obviously, as it said, a basic level. And I'll go ahead and save this. Save current level as, and I'm going to put it in my levels folder. And I'm going to type AI test, save, and you should be able to press play and just kind of run around. And if that doesn't work for you, or if you don't have a character, can't see your character, let me know. But I believe that should work for everybody. All right, so we're going to add a couple more things. We're going to add the nav mesh, which again is the area that our AI is allowed to do things in our game. We'll go up here to this white cube with the green plus, and this is going to be volumes, nav mesh volume. Okay, and obviously we want to make it a little bigger. First thing I'll do is just center it in the map by clicking there. There it is. If we press P, it'll show in green the extent of our nav mesh. So what I want to do is I want to scale this to the outer edges of this floor here. And I'll grab the red one. And of course, just to demonstrate, you can always type that into here if you don't like dragging here, or if you need a very specific measurement. So I'm just going to do 40 by 40. All right, and I'll press P to turn that off. Let's go ahead and save again. And now we should be able to go to the AI that we created earlier and drag that into here. And if everything is set up properly, we have a floor, we have a nav mesh bounds volume. Then when we press play, that AI should move around, and it does. Okay. Very cool. All right. So a couple more things before, and we're gonna continue this tomorrow, but we're gonna do a couple more things. We are going to go into this AI Wanderer, and we want to, well, first of all, I'm going to change I don't like the orange, so I'm going to just do like, make it steel. Okay, this is going to be a bad guy tomorrow who's going to like hunt us. All right. So I want to give him eyes. We're just going to use a basic cube so that I can see what direction he's facing because it's hard to tell really with this. So let's go and for our mesh, let's add another cube. So I'll click add cube. And I'm going to size this so that it's almost, I mean, think of it like a VR headset. That's kind of what we're looking for here. So practice with your scaling. Okay, whoops. And then the movement. So I'm going to move these eyes out a little bit. And I'm going to turn off my snapping so that I can really give this kind of a headset sort of look. So I will just scale it like that, down a little bit, and turn off the snapping for movement again, which is this magnifier here, or not magnifier, magnet. Okay, turn that off too, move that down here. And then I'm going to find a nice little red color for it. So we'll change this cube right here. Let's see if I have a red. Should. Yeah. Like the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica, if anybody ever watched that. All
I
right.
saw both series.
Yeah, I know. I did too. I was actually alive for the first one. Um, okay, so let's save all. And now let's press play and let's go and see. Yeah, we can kind of see now where the AI is looking based on those red eyes. Oh, okay. All right. Very cool. So what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and stop here. Be sure you keep this level. Be sure you save it because we're going to open this back up tomorrow. And what we're going to do, just to give you a preview, is we're going to place a couple of walls in here. And we're going to play a little hide and seek with this AI character. We're going to see how long we can go avoiding the character or avoiding being detected. And we use that with what we call the pawn sensing component, where we can define how far out the character can see and also what its peripheral vision is, right? Because we can't see all around us. We can only see kind of out, out of the sides of our eyes. So think of it like a cone. All right. So um, that is it. We'll wrap up here. I'll stop the recording and then we'll open up for any questions you might have. So let's do that first. And